He can't even remember to feed the children, Your Honor. Last Tuesday, my grandson called me crying because there was nothing in the refrigerator. My mother-in-law said it without a single crack in her voice. She was sitting 6 feet away from me in a navy blue dress she had bought with my dead husband's credit card, pearls around her neck that had belonged to my husband's grandmother, pearls she had taken from my jewelry box 3 days after the funeral while I was asleep upstairs. And she told a family court judge in Nashville, Tennessee, that I was an unfit mother. I didn't react. I didn't raise my voice. I placed both hands flat on the table in front of me and focused on a number. 31. That was how many pages were in the folder sitting in my bag under the table. 31 pages that would end her performance and every lie she had built around it. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Have you ever buried someone you loved and then looked up from the grave to realize that the people standing around you were already dividing up what was left? Drop a comment if you know that feeling. Because on a cold morning in March, in courtroom 6A of the Davidson County Family Court, I was surrounded by my husband's family, and every one of them believed I was the villain. My husband, Marcus, died 8 months ago. Brain aneurysm. No warning. No illness. No slow decline where you get to say the things you should have said years ago. He was coaching our daughter's soccer practice on a Saturday afternoon. He said he had a headache. He sat down on the bench, and he never stood up again. He was 34 years old. Marcus and I had been married for 9 years. We met in college at Vanderbilt, got married the summer after graduation, and built everything together. We bought our first house in Franklin when we were 26, a little 3-bedroom on a half-acre with a porch that faced west so you could watch the sun drop behind the hills every evening. Marcus was a civil engineer. I was a cybersecurity analyst for a healthcare compliance firm. We weren't rich, but we were careful. Marcus had a life insurance policy worth $1.6 million. He had a 401k with another $420,000. He had an investment account his father had started for him when he was born that had grown to just over $700,000. And he had the house, which we owned outright because Marcus didn't believe in mortgage debt. Altogether, my husband left behind roughly $2.8 million in assets. Every cent of it was meant for me and our 2 children, Lily, who was 7, and Noah, who was 4. His mother, Patricia, had been part of our lives from the beginning. She was the kind of woman who never raised her voice because she didn't need to. She controlled rooms with silence. She controlled people with guilt. When Marcus and I got engaged, Patricia told him, in front of me, that I was a sweet girl but probably not equipped to manage a household. When Lily was born, Patricia showed up at the hospital uninvited and told the nurse she was the grandmother and needed to be in the delivery room. When we bought the house in Franklin, Patricia called Marcus every day for 2 weeks, telling him the neighborhood wasn't safe enough and that we should buy closer to her in Brentwood. Marcus loved his mother. He also knew exactly what she was. 2 years before he died, he sat me down at the kitchen table and showed me his will. He had updated it without telling Patricia. Everything went to me. The kids' portions were held in a trust with me as sole trustee. Patricia was not mentioned. Not because Marcus didn't love her. He did. But because he knew that if anything ever happened to him, Patricia would try to take control of everything. He looked me in the eyes that night and said something I will never forget. He said, "She will come for this. All of it. And she will start by coming for you. Don't let her." I promised him I wouldn't. I didn't know how soon I would have to keep that promise. The first move came 11 days after the funeral. Patricia called Marcus's financial advisor, a man named Glenn Hooper, and told him she needed access to the investment account. Glenn, to his credit, told her she wasn't authorized. So Patricia called the insurance company. She told them she was the surviving spouse. They asked for documentation. She couldn't provide it because she wasn't the spouse. I was. When those doors closed, Patricia changed tactics. She stopped calling institutions and started calling people. She called Marcus's college roommate and told him I had been neglecting the children. She called the pastor at our church and told him I had a drinking problem. She called my mother, my own mother, and told her she was worried about my mental state. She told everyone the same story, delivered with tears and a trembling voice. That poor girl is falling apart. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. Those babies are suffering. Someone needs to step in before something terrible happens. None of it was true. I was grieving, yes. I cried every night after the kids went to bed. I slept with Marcus's college sweatshirt because it still smelled like him. But I got up every morning at 6. I made breakfast. I drove Lily to school and Noah to daycare. I paid every bill on time. I went to therapy every Wednesday. I was not falling apart. I was holding everything together with both hands, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But Patricia didn't need the truth. She needed a narrative, and she was building one, brick by brick, witness by witness, until the wall was high enough that no one could see over it, to what was actually happening in my house. 5 months after Marcus died, Patricia filed a petition in family court. She requested emergency temporary guardianship of Lily and Noah, and she requested to be appointed conservator over Marcus's estate, claiming I was mentally and emotionally incapable of managing either. Attached to her petition was a psychological evaluation written by a licensed therapist named Dr. Helen Voss. The evaluation was 6 pages long. It described me as exhibiting signs of severe grief psychosis, emotional detachment from my children, and impaired executive functioning consistent with an inability to manage complex financial decisions. Dr. Helen Voss had never met me. She had never spoken to me. She had never observed me with my children. She had never set foot in my house. She wrote a 6-page clinical evaluation of a woman she had never seen, based entirely on what Patricia had told her in 3 phone conversations. I found out later that Dr. Voss and Patricia served on the same board of a children's charity in Brentwood. They had known each other for 12 years. Dr. Voss had attended Patricia's Christmas party 4 months before writing that report. When I read the petition, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of Noah's daycare. I had just picked him up. He was in the back seat, singing a song about a caterpillar that his teacher had taught him. I read every word of that petition while my 4-year-old sang about caterpillars, and I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Rage is loud and sloppy, and that was exactly what Patricia wanted. What I felt was clarity. The same kind of clarity I felt at work when I found an intrusion in a client's network. The moment when the noise drops away and all you can see is the pattern. Here's what most people don't know about cybersecurity work. It's not about firewalls and passwords. It's about behavior. It's about watching how data moves through a system and recognizing when something doesn't belong. You learn to think like the attacker. You learn to trace every action backward until you find the point of entry. And you learn, above everything else, that the most dangerous threats are the ones that look normal on the surface. Patricia looked normal, concerned grandmother, church volunteer, community board member. But underneath that surface, she was running an operation, and I was going to map every node in her network before I shut it down. I didn't hire a lawyer right away. I hired one eventually, a quiet woman named Sandra Cho, who specialized in contested estates. But first I spent 3 weeks doing what I do best. I gathered data. I pulled every financial record I could legally access. I checked the estate accounts Marcus had left me and found something I hadn't expected. 2 withdrawals from the investment account totaling $87,000 made 6 weeks after Marcus's death, both authorized by Glenn Hooper using a power of attorney document that listed Patricia as agent. A power of attorney that I had never signed, that Marcus had never signed. That did not exist in any version of Marcus's estate planning documents. I called Glenn Hooper's office. His assistant said he was unavailable. I called again the next day. Unavailable. I called a 3rd time and was told that Mr. Hooper had transferred my husband's account to a different advisor and was no longer servicing it. That was when I understood. Glenn wasn't avoiding me because he was busy. He was avoiding me because he knew what he had done. I pulled the power of attorney document from the county clerk's office. It was dated 3 days before Marcus died, which was impossible because Marcus was in the ICU on that date, unconscious, on a ventilator. The signature on the document looked like Marcus's handwriting at first glance, but when I compared it to the signature on our mortgage payoff letter, the differences were obvious. The loop on the M was wrong. The tail on the S was too long. It was close. It was not right. I took the document to a forensic handwriting expert in Memphis. She confirmed it was a forgery within 48 hours. She also found something else. The notary seal on the document belonged to a woman named Rita Saunders, who worked as a paralegal at Glenn Hooper's firm. Rita had notarized a forged signature on a power of attorney for a dead man. That is a Class D felony in the state of Tennessee. I kept going. I accessed the metadata on the PDF version of the power of attorney that had been filed electronically with the court. The file was created on a computer registered to Patricia's home network. The author field in the document properties listed the username as P. Weston, laptop. Patricia's maiden name was Weston. She had typed it herself, on her own computer, and then she had Glenn and Rita make it look official. I documented everything. Screenshots, timestamps, file hashes, network logs. I built a digital evidence package the same way I built incident reports at work. Every claim sourced, every connection mapped, every conclusion supported by at least 2 independent data points. Then I waited. Patricia's court date arrived on a Tuesday in March. Nashville was cold that week, the kind of cold that sits in your bones and makes you want to stay in bed. I didn't stay in bed. I got up at 5. I made pancakes for Lily and Noah. I dropped them off at school and daycare. I put on a gray blazer and black pants and drove to the courthouse with a leather bag on the passenger seat that held 31 pages and the end of Patricia's plan. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Catherine Okafor presided. She was a black woman in her mid-50s with short natural hair and reading glasses she wore on a chain around her neck. She had a reputation for being patient and thorough, which was exactly what I needed. Patricia had brought an audience. Marcus's brother Derek was there. So was Marcus's cousin Angela and her husband. 2 women from Patricia's church group sat in the back row. Glenn Hooper was not there. I noticed his absence immediately. Patricia's lawyer was a tall man named Donald Birch who spoke in a deep voice and used phrases like, "with all due respect," before saying things that were not respectful at all. He opened by requesting that the court immediately appoint Patricia as emergency guardian, citing the evaluation from Dr. Voss. "Your Honor," he said, "the children are in a precarious situation. The respondent has shown a pattern of withdrawal, emotional instability, and financial negligence. Dr. Voss, a licensed clinical psychologist, has evaluated the situation and concluded that the respondent is not currently capable of providing a safe and stable environment." Judge Okafor looked at me. She put on her reading glasses and studied me for a moment. "Miss Weston," she said, using my married name, "this is a serious petition. Your mother-in-law is requesting guardianship of your children and conservatorship over your late husband's estate. How do you wish to respond?" The room was quiet. Patricia was watching me with the careful expression of someone who had rehearsed this moment in the mirror. Derek had his arms crossed. Angela was looking at her phone. They all expected me to cry. They expected me to stumble over my words. They expected the woman Patricia had described to them for months. Fragile, confused, falling apart. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I looked at Patricia. Not at the judge, not at the gallery. At her. I held her gaze for 4 full seconds. Then I turned to Judge Okafor and said, "Your Honor, I appreciate the opportunity to respond. I'd like to address the psychological evaluation first, if that's acceptable." The judge nodded. I opened my bag and pulled out the folder. "Doctor, Helen Voss submitted a 6-page evaluation diagnosing me with severe grief, psychosis, and impaired executive functioning." I paused. "Dr. Voss has never met me. She has never contacted me to schedule an evaluation. She has never spoken with my personal therapist, my children's pediatrician, or anyone who has actually observed me in the past 8 months." I checked. I called her office and asked for my file. They told me there was no file because I was never a patient. Donald Birch stood up. "Your Honor, Dr. Voss based her evaluation on detailed reports from the petitioner, who has direct knowledge of the respondent's behavior." I continued as if he hadn't spoken. "What Dr. Voss does have is a 12-year personal friendship with the petitioner. They served together on the board of the Brentwood Children's Foundation. Dr. Voss attended the petitioner's Christmas party on December 14th of last year, 83 days before writing this evaluation. I have the event photos from the Foundation's public Facebook page showing them together at that party. They are on page 3 of this folder." Patricia's lips pressed together, a thin line, like a cut. Judge Okafor held up her hand to Donald Birch, who was trying to stand again. She looked at me. "Go on." "I would also like the court to know that I filed a complaint with the Tennessee Board of Examiners in Psychology 2 weeks ago regarding Dr. Voss's conduct. Diagnosing a patient without examination is a direct violation of the board's Code of Ethics, Standard 9.01. The board has confirmed receipt of my complaint and opened a review." The gallery shifted. Angela put her phone down. Derek uncrossed his arms. They were paying attention now. Judge Okafor turned to Patricia. "Mrs. Weston, the court takes psychological evaluations very seriously. If the evaluator has a personal relationship with the petitioner and never examined the respondent, that raises significant concerns. Do you wish to address this?" Patricia leaned toward Donald, who whispered something in her ear. Then she spoke, her voice still smooth but tighter now, like a rope pulled too far. "Dr. Voss is a respected professional, Your Honor. I came to her as a concerned grandmother. I described what I had witnessed, and she gave me her professional opinion. I see nothing wrong with that," I said. "Then let's talk about what you witnessed, Mrs. Weston." Because I'd like to present what actually happened during the period you claim I was neglecting my children. I turned to page 7. I had pulled records from Lily's school and Noah's daycare. Attendance records showing 0 absences in 8 months. Teacher evaluations noting that both children were happy, social, and well-adjusted. A letter from their pediatrician confirming regular checkups and healthy development. A signed statement from my therapist confirming I had attended every weekly session and showed no signs of psychosis, dissociation, or impaired functioning. Then, I turned to page 14. I'd also like to address the claim of financial negligence, I said. Specifically, the petitioner's assertion that the estate has been mismanaged. I placed a single sheet of paper on the table. This is a summary of 2 withdrawals from my late husband's investment account. $42,000 on October 11th, $45,000 on November 3rd. Both were authorized using a power of attorney document filed with the county clerk's office. I looked at Patricia. I did not authorize those withdrawals. My husband did not sign that power of attorney. He was unconscious in the ICU, on the date listed on the document. He died 18 hours later. Someone forged his signature, had it notarized by a paralegal named Rita Saunders at Glenn Hooper's firm, and used it to withdraw $87,000 from an account that belonged to his estate. An estate that belongs to me and my children. Silence. Not the silence of a pause. The silence of a room, recalculating. Donald Birch was on his feet, but his face had changed. He looked like a man who had just realized his client hadn't told him everything. Your Honor, I need a moment to confer with my client. I didn't give him the moment. I turned to page 19. I continued. I had the power of attorney document analyzed by a certified forensic handwriting examiner. Her report is in this folder. The signature is a forgery. The stroke patterns, pen pressure, and letter formation are inconsistent with my husband's verified signature from 6 other documents. I turned to page 23. Additionally, I accessed the metadata of the PDF version filed electronically with this court. The file was created on a computer with the username P. Weston, laptop. The petitioner's maiden name is Weston. The document was authored on her personal computer. Patricia stood up. That is a lie. She's making this up. This is exactly what I've been saying. She's unstable. She's paranoid. She's Mrs. Weston, Judge Okafor said, and her voice was the kind of quiet that makes you stop breathing. Sit down. Patricia sat. The judge removed her reading glasses. She set them on the bench and looked at Patricia with an expression that had no warmth in it at all. Mrs. Weston, she said, I have been on this bench for 19 years. I have seen grandparents file legitimate petitions out of genuine concern for their grandchildren. I have also seen petitions used as instruments of control and financial manipulation. She paused. What I am looking at right now concerns me deeply. She turned to me. Miss Weston, do you have the forensic examiner's full report available? Yes, Your Honor. Page 20 through 26, along with the metadata analysis, the filing records, and the notary identification. She turned to Donald Birch. Mr. Birch, were you aware of this power of attorney and its origins? Donald looked at Patricia. Then he looked at the judge. Your Honor, I was provided with documentation by my client. I was not involved in the preparation of the power of attorney. I had no knowledge of any irregularity. He was distancing himself. I watched Patricia register that her own lawyer was stepping away from her, and I saw the exact moment she understood what was happening. Her face didn't crumble. It hardened, like clay drying in the sun. Judge Okafor spoke slowly. This court denies the petition for emergency guardianship. This court denies the petition for conservatorship. Both are denied with prejudice. She looked at her clerk. I am also referring the matter of the power of attorney document to the Davidson County District Attorney's Office for investigation into potential forgery, fraud, and perjury. I am directing the county clerk to flag the original filing for preservation as evidence. She looked at Patricia one last time. Mrs. Weston, if it is determined that this document was forged and used to withdraw funds from your son's estate, you will be facing serious criminal charges. I would strongly advise you to obtain criminal defense counsel. The courtroom emptied slowly, the way rooms do when no one is sure what to say. Derek was standing by the door. He hadn't moved during any of it. He looked at me as I gathered my folder, and for the first time since Marcus died, he didn't look through me. He looked at me. I didn't know, he said. I know, I said. She's good at what she does. He shook his head. Marcus told me once that Mom would try something if anything ever happened to him. I thought he was being dramatic. I looked at Derek, And I thought about all the dinners and holidays and phone calls where Patricia had been shaping his view of me, one small comment at a time. I thought about how easy it is to believe someone you love, even when they're lying, especially when they're lying. He wasn't dramatic, I said. He was right. Angela came up behind Derek. She was crying. I'm sorry, she said. I should have called you. I should have asked you directly instead of just listening to her. I nodded. I didn't have the energy to say it was okay because it wasn't okay. It would take time. But I understood. Manipulators don't just deceive the target. They build an entire ecosystem of belief around themselves. They turn witnesses into weapons. They make good people complicit without those people ever knowing it. 4 weeks later, the DA's office opened a formal investigation. Glenn Hooper was arrested on charges of fraud and conspiracy. Rita Saunders, the paralegal who notarized the forged signature, was charged with official misconduct and accessory to fraud. She cooperated immediately and gave a full statement. Patricia was indicted 6 weeks after the hearing on 5 counts: forgery, fraud, perjury, theft from an estate, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Because in Tennessee, stealing from a deceased person's estate while their surviving spouse and minor children are the beneficiaries qualifies under the Vulnerable Adult Statute. Dr. Helen Voss did not face criminal charges, but the Board of Examiners suspended her license pending a full review. 7 months later, they revoked it permanently. She had violated the most basic ethical standard of her profession. She had diagnosed a human being she had never met, never spoken to, never observed, based on the word of someone who was actively defrauding that human being. The board's written decision called it a profound failure of professional responsibility. I read that decision sitting on my porch in Franklin, drinking coffee, watching Lily try to teach Noah how to ride a bicycle in the front yard. He kept falling. She kept picking him up. I thought about how many times Marcus had done the same thing for me. Patricia's trial lasted 4 days. Her defense attorney argued that she had been consumed by grief and made poor decisions. The prosecution presented the metadata, the forensic analysis, the bank records, Rita Saunders' testimony, and a timeline that showed Patricia had begun planning the power of attorney forgery 12 days after Marcus's funeral. 12 days. While I was still wearing his sweatshirt to bed because it smelled like him, she was sitting at her laptop figuring out how to steal from his children. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found her guilty on all 5 counts. The judge sentenced her to 4 years, with the possibility of parole after 2. Glenn Hooper received 30 months. Rita Saunders received 2 years of probation and 200 hours of community service in exchange for her cooperation. The $87,000 was recovered. The investment account was restored. I changed every password, every authorization, every point of access on every account connected to Marcus's estate. I hired a new financial advisor who answered only to me. I set up education funds for Lily and Noah. I donated $50,000 to the Legal Aid Society in Nashville that helps single parents fight fraudulent guardianship petitions because I had the resources to fight Patricia. But most people don't. Most people sit in that courtroom without a folder, without the skills, without the evidence, and they lose. Patricia called me once from the county detention center. I almost didn't answer, but I did because I wanted to hear what she would say. "You took my son's family away from me," she said. Her voice was flat. No tears. No trembling. Just the raw sound of someone who still believed they were the victim. "No, Patricia," I said. "You had a family. You had grandchildren who loved you. You had a daughter-in-law who would have shared everything with you if you had just asked. But you didn't want to be part of the family. You wanted to own it." She hung up. I blocked the number. Derek started coming over on Sundays. He would bring donuts for the kids and sit on the porch with me while they played in the yard. We didn't talk about Patricia much. We talked about Marcus. The good stuff. The time he tried to build a treehouse and it collapsed in 2 days. The time he coached Lily's team to a championship and cried harder than any of the kids. The way he always burned the garlic when he cooked but refused to admit it. It was hard at first. We were both grieving the same person from different angles. But grief, I learned, is lighter when you carry it with someone who understands. Not easier. Just lighter. One Sunday, Derek brought a box of Marcus's old things from Patricia's house. Photo albums, his baseball glove from high school, a letter he had written to his mother on her 50th birthday that she had kept framed on her dresser. "I don't know what to do with these," Derek said. "She can't have them where she is, and they shouldn't be in a storage unit." I took the box. I put the letter in a frame in Lily's room so she could read it when she was older and know that her father had been the kind of man who wrote letters to the people he loved. 14 months after Marcus died, I sat on the floor of Noah's room at bedtime. He was almost 5. He asked me the question he asked at least once a week. Mama, is Daddy watching us from the stars? I said what I always said. I think so, baby. Then he asked something new. Was Grandma mean to you? Kids hear everything. They understand more than you think. I didn't lie to him. I said, Grandma made some choices that hurt our family, but that doesn't mean she never loved you. People can love you and still make bad decisions. He thought about it for a minute. Then he said, I think Daddy is mad at her. Maybe, I said, but I think Daddy would want us to be happy more than he would want us to be mad. Noah nodded like that made sense to him. Then he closed his eyes and went to sleep. I sat there for a long time after that, in the dark, listening to him breathe. Here's what I want to say to the person who needs to hear it. I know what it feels like to sit across a table from someone who is lying about you with a smile on their face. I know what it feels like to have your own family doubt you because someone else got to them first. I know what it feels like to be told you're falling apart when you're actually holding everything together. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are not what they say you are. But I need you to hear this part too. Do not react. Do not scream. Do not post about it. Do not call everyone in your phone and beg them to believe you. That is exactly what the other person wants. They need you to look unhinged because that's the story they've already written about you. Instead, do this. Open a folder, start documenting. Dates, times, screenshots, records, everything. Save it somewhere they can't reach. Build your case one page at a time, in silence, where no one can see. And when the day comes, walk into that room with your evidence and your steady hands and show them who they underestimated. Patricia was loud. I was quiet. She was fast. I was patient. She performed for the audience. I prepared for the judge. And when the truth finally came out, every person in that room realized they had been watching the wrong woman the entire time. Justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you build, one document at a time, in a folder they never knew existed.